Broadly speaking, there are two ways of organising human community, two dynamics, two paradigms, two ways of organising and directing energy. There's the top-down model and the grassroots model. We've looked at this before, and you may recognise these two patterns if I say that one is represented by the sword and the other by the cauldron. I'm going to use the word magic sometimes here to describe dynamic, effective, creative and transformative power, a spiritual ingredient that shapes and determines outcomes. So there is sword magic and there is cauldron magic. To loosely and broadly create categories, sword magic is masculine and cauldron magic is feminine. Of course, all people share both feminine and masculine qualities because all people are created in the image of God. And God, from whom both masculine and feminine proceed, is one. In any individual, there will be a balance, nuance, emphasis and tendency. Humanity is not straightforwardly binary and does not categorise neatly according to sex or gender. The masculine sword energy or magic can be at work in individuals identifying as women, and the feminine cauldron energy or magic can be evident in individuals identifying as men. But for human society to function effectively, both must be robustly evident and represented. This is like the yin and yang of Taoism, the balancing aspects of nature, the ebb and flow, the breathing in and out, the assertive and recessive, the mountain and the valley. Together, they make life complete. If we reach back into social formation as far as we can see, we come to hunter-gatherer communities. We see sword energy in the spear of the hunters and cauldron energy in the bowl of the gatherers. So, always bearing in mind that there will be a personal mixture of both these forms of energy in each individual, we can think about the manifestation of these energies in our communities and in the church. Politically, sword magic dominates in societies ruled by a despot, a monarch, an oligarch, a chieftain. It's a top-down form of authority, much like an army where unquestioning obedience and loyalty are mandated, where the many express the will of the one, where wealth, power and privilege are held by a ruling class to whom the people look for instruction and direction, or punishment and reward. Cauldron magic is the organising force in democracies and benign anarchies, where decisions are reached by consensus in the moot, and leadership is seen as representation of the common mind rather than innate privilege that cannot be challenged. Culturally, sword magic is evident in celebrity culture and rigid tiered class structures, where the masses admire and look to the select few. the stage, the podium, and the dais, where the important person orates and performs before serried ranks of spectators and listeners, where culture expresses sword magic. There is a top-down flow of authority. Cauldron magic is more culturally diffuse, expressed in folk traditions like the music of spinning songs, sea shanties and hymns, or the skills held in common in the community in traditional crafts such as local pottery or weaving styles. Patriarchy is a cultural expression of sword energy, and Jesus was born into a very patriarchal society dominated by the masculine principle, the prophet, priest, and king. But within the patriarchy, the balancing principle of cauldron energy was evident in the norms of home and family, where the role and power of the mother was revered, though always subject to masculine domination and disposal. If you read the Gospels with this in mind, you begin to notice the counterculture subversiveness of Jesus. In Luke 22, 24-27, he puts it like this. A dispute arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves." Time and again, the story of Martha and Mary is a good example. Jesus asserts a principle of egalitarian inclusion, a circle of welcome. He evidently thought cauldron magic needed to be made more prominent than it was, as part of establishing spiritual health. This is not to say that Jesus rejected or dismissed sword magic, far from it. The chalice, cup of blood and image of a womb, is lifted up in his hands at the Last Supper. The bread, one round loaf, is shared among the many in that holy meal. The bread and the chalice express cauldron energy, the circle of sharing and inclusion. But the cross towers above human helplessness and is sword energy absolute, the one who dies alone for the healing of the many, the one who spearheads the formation of the way to heaven, who goes ahead bringing all humanity after him. Do we have our Lord and Master to whom we owe gratitude and loyalty? Why, yes, we do. Do we have our solitary hero acting on our behalf? Yes, we do. Do we have battle and courage and victory? Yes, we do. Sword magic is at the heart of our faith. Sword energy is inherently violent, whereas cauldron energy heals and granulates what is broken. Both are present in the way of Jesus, who breaks the bread as well as sharing it, and who said both, "I have not come to bring peace on earth, but a sword," and "I pray that they may all be one, as you and I are one." Both forms of energy must be held in balance. Health is a form of balance, and imbalance is at the roots of all disease. In the times in which we live, we are seeing a crumbling of power structures. We are discovering that our idols have feet of clay. Authoritarian forms of society are falling apart. The credibility of leadership is diminishing and disillusionment is increasing. Now is a time when the healing of the earth and of human community require a reassertion of cauldron energy, interreliance, consultation, inclusion, transparency, the willingness of each one to work for the betterment of all. The circle, not the serried ranks. The family, not the army. The Catholic spirit. This corrective must also be expressed in the Church. The poison of paedophilia is a toxic form of sword magic, the powerful taking advantage of the vulnerable. The days of the throne and the mitre are over. The priest who cannot be challenged, the supremacy of husband over wife, the heterosexual prerogative of permitting or forbidding homosexual union, the requirement of conformity under threat of exclusion. These are all forms of sword energy, authoritarian, exclusive, masculine, dominant, intolerant, and privileged. The message and example of Jesus, look in the Gospels and you will see this clearly, has been subverted by the Church into a celebrity cult about Jesus that no longer represents him. His preference for inclusion, openness, and simplicity have been exchanged for the privilege of rank, secrecy in decision-making, and the complications of organisational red tape. There have always been huge numbers of gay clergy, but they had to come in by stealth. The Church has been massively supported by women, but they were offered only menial and subordinate positions: the priest's housekeeper, the church cleaners, the organisers of the coffee rota, the arrangers of flowers, the providers of pasta bakes, the parish office clerks. And the children, for the most part, have just gone. The cross stands, but the chalice has been withheld. It is time for the laos, the whole family of God, to receive under both kinds. Time, I think, for the round loaf to be broken and shared, for the chalice to be lifted for God's blessing, for the gathered people of God to step into their calling. It is time to reassert the willingness we saw in Jesus to take the risk of trusting one another. The gospel is approachable and accessible. It is for everyone, not monopolised and dispensed by authority figures. It is time to put our trust not in princes or priests, not even in synods and church councils and staked out defined denominations, but in one another, in the movement of the Spirit in the midst of the people of God, the word of the Spirit as it arises in the hearts of the community, the power of the Spirit in prayer and love, in accountability to one another, in bearing one another's burdens and so fulfilling the law of Christ. This, now, is the hour of the prophetic and healing ministry, the priesthood of all believers, the Spirit poured out on all flesh. For you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. And not us alone as a privileged class, but everyone. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for the many. I have other sheep, he said, which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they shall hear my voice, and they shall become one flock with one shepherd. For by this shall it be known that we are his disciples, only this, not that we are admitted to church membership and therefore allowed to take communion, not that we are Methodist or Catholic or Orthodox or Baptist or Anglican, not that we are evangelical or liberal, not that we wear green vestments on the Sundays after Trinity, or that we can say Mass without a chasuble but not without a stole, not that we know the Athanasian Creed and the theories of the Atonement and the Wesley Quadrilateral and the meaning of transubstantiation, only that we love one another. There is only one form of sword energy valid in the family of Jesus, and that is the cross. It is in this, the willingness humbly to lay everything down because of love, that our authority resides. Cauldron energy radiates from and is gathered in our Eucharistic communion. One bread, one body, one cup, everyone included, and no one left out. Oh, put not your trust in princes. The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest. For I am among you as one who serves.